everyone. You're very welcome to the Higher Education Authority Education for Sustainable Development Spotlight Series. We're coming near the end of the Spotlight Series now with just a few sessions to go. My name is Mark Kelly. I'm on secondment at the moment as the National Policy Advisor on Education for Sustainable Development. Today, we're delighted that we have University of Limerick who are going to share some of their ESD practice. So I'm going to hand over to Una now to start the ball rolling. So thanks, everyone.
Great, Mark. Thanks very much. And you're very welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today to hear about some of the work that's going on at University of Limerick. So we have a couple of different things to share. We're going to start by just a little look at how ESD fits with some of our strategies and our frameworks. You're going to hear then 4 case studies from our 4 different faculties. And we're going to finish with a cross-institutional student volunteering initiative. So to get straight in, we're joined first of all by Dr. Ida O'Sullivan. Ida is a senior educational developer at the Centre for Transformative Learning here at UL, and she's going to talk about ESD in UL strategies and frameworks.
Thank you very much, Una. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to meet with you today and to share with you ESD within our strategies and frameworks at the University of Limerick. So when we look at our strategies to start with, the UL at 50 strategic plan, sustainability is part of our core values. Doing the right thing in the right way for the right reasons, tackling national and global challenges and supporting sustainable goals. So that's our broad strategy at an institutional level. And then today we're going to share with you how this fits particularly within our curricula and case studies to demonstrate that. Within our HEA Performance Compact, we have set a target for 2030 that 100% of our academic programmes will have been revised in line with our curriculum framework to embed the graduate attributes across the curriculum at UL. And this is where we have embedded ESD. They're strongly connected to our graduate attributes and they're a core part of our curriculum development framework. So our curriculum development framework is part of transforming the curriculum at UL, and it's part of our Action for Wisdom, which is our learning, teaching and assessment strategy. And within that, we state that UL empowers our students, graduates and staff to be active citizens who contribute to the well-being and future of our planet. So we have embedded that then within our curriculum framework, and our curriculum framework guides our faculty and all involved in our curricula on the design. So we outline our graduate attributes therein, the principles of curriculum design, the types of pedagogies and learning environments that support that, and all of that within a UL context. And our curriculum framework embeds the synergy between teaching and research through research-led, challenge-driven, experiential, collaborative learning modes, and fosters cross-disciplinary sharing and exchange. So already you can see there the similarities and alignment with the competencies, the Green Comp framework, etc., and the types of environments that support the development of those competencies. This summarizes our curriculum framework, and it's a little bit busy, so I'm just going to focus in now on those parts that are important, particularly relating to ESD. So if we remind ourselves of the European Green Competencies and the 12 main competencies therein, when I show you our graduate attributes, you will see the alignment. So the UL graduate is an active and globally engaged citizen. And the types of attributes that we have defined as supporting our students to achieve those graduate attributes are that they will be responsible, curious, courageous, articulate and agile. And you see the similarities. So in terms of being responsible, they're personally, socially, professionally, sustainably and ethically responsible. In terms of curiosity, we're trying to graduate problem solvers, critical thinkers that are imaginative, creative, etc. They're courageous in that they are resilient, tenacious, and want better for the world that we are going to live in. They're articulate and agile in that they're open-minded, independent, etc. Then in terms of the learning environment that we set out, Looking to Sterling here, we see that education for sustainable development requires a shift towards active, participative and experiential learning modes and methods that engage the learner and make a real difference to understanding, thinking and ability to act. So when I said to you at the beginning, what was the purpose of the curriculum framework and what did that look like? It was exactly that. It was to embed the synergy between teaching and research in a research-led, challenge-driven, experiential, collaborative learning environment that fosters interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity. And this is what it looks like within the framework then. You know, it's student-centered, it's inclusive, active, it's applied, multidisciplinary, international, research-informed and technology-enhanced. And working together, the learning environment and the attributes that we try to achieve guide our faculty in embedding ESD into the curriculum. And it's an integrated curriculum framework in that it's integrated into our processes for programme design, approval and review. So when we work with faculty on the design of their programmes and as they prepare for programme approval, they're keeping in mind the learning environment and the graduate attributes at all times. And when it comes to approval here at programme level, the green arrow just points out that they're required to speak to the learning environment, they're required to speak to the graduate attributes and show how they align with the curriculum framework. And then this is the same is true at modular level. Our faculty are required to outline how the module is taught and how and which graduate attributes are embedded into that module. Also, as part of our programme review and the self-assessment reports, our faculty are required to reflect on that, and there's a chapter of our programme self-assessment reports dedicated to alignment with the curriculum framework and how the graduate attributes are achieved. So that gives you a little bit of framing and how that's set up at the university, and you'll see now some case studies from our colleagues.
Great, Ida. Thank you for giving us the sort of contextualizing piece there. We're going to move on now, and I want to introduce you to Dr. Anne-Marie Ryan. Anne-Marie is an associate professor in the Department of Management and Marketing at the Chemie Business School, and she's going to talk to us about blurring boundaries to shape change, the role of the stakeholder engagement in ESD, and specifically in the Chemie Business School.
Thank you so much, and thank you, colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of the work that we've been doing, I suppose, here in the Chemie Business School, and I'm going to look at a particular case study in more depth in that. Just a little bit about the Chemie Business School. Firstly, we are one of the four or five faculties, I can't remember, at the University of Limerick. We're very proud of our focus on sustainability and social justice. We are named after Jim Kemmy, who is a socialist and politician who very much had justice and injustice at the core focus of his work. And we've taken that to heart, so to speak, and it really very much informs what we do as a faculty. We have been a signatory school for a number of years now on the UN initiative PRIME, Principles of Responsible Management Education. And we're very proud in the last number of years to be a champion school. So we're only one of 3 universities on the island of Ireland, and that includes Queen's in the north, to be a champion school. So this really does go to the heart of what we do, and very much is in line with the graduate attributes that Ida has just talked you through there, in terms of the type of graduate that we would like to help grow here in the Chemie. So just to stay within the time then, I won't delay. Just figuring out how to move things along, actually. Here we go. So I suppose when I got a chance to think about this and bring forward the case studies from the Chemie, I started to reflect again on just really how ESD challenges us, and it actually asks us to almost rethink what is education at all, because this is no longer just, let's say, sustainability and climate science as a discipline in and of itself, but it's asking all of us, regardless of the discipline, to consider the issues around sustainability and social justice, and how that might be relevant to the discipline itself. So it starts to really challenge us to think, you know, how would a marketing lecturer think about not only ethics, but the implications of marketing on the climate? And how do you do that and still just, you know, teach marketing 101? And it really starts to challenge us. And I think in particular, because issues around sustainability really draw us to consider our values. We're having to think in a more intergenerational way. It shifts our thinking. So really, ESD is quite radical in the sense that it asks us to really consider what is knowledge, how we understand knowledge, how we understand what success means, even challenging core notions of growth and so on. And you can imagine, as a business school in particular, that challenge is quite near and present. So really, I think a core of this, when we start to think, you know, intergenerationally, we start to think about how climate change and social inequalities, how they really, you know, affect people and affect people's lives today and tomorrow, and what is the role of business and markets in that. We really start to think about this. It's important for us to make this real world connection, I think, to not just sustainability as a disciplinary abstracted topic, but as something that is shaping how we live now and will shape and frame our economies in the future. So that connection with the issues themselves does mean that stakeholder engagement is important. So where and how we can connect with the problem owners, if you like, or at least those closest to those challenges, and make that connection in the classroom is really critical. So it's on that issue around the sustainable or stakeholder engagement that I would like to talk to you about. And I'm going to offer kind of a typical academic, offer a bit of a framework that I was starting to think about in relation to different ways that we can bring the stakeholder voice to the students. And I suppose the first one is to really think about the classroom itself. So here's where the students are in the classroom as they were, and the stakeholder or a key actor comes into the classroom to share a story. And we see this a lot, of course. Guest lectures are kind of bread and butter of academic life. And here's just from my colleague, Deirdre O'Loughlin, who had an alumni student come to speak to her class about her career as in CSR and sustainability, and how even as a marketing executive, how these issues and concerns became central to her career, which is really valuable for marketing students to hear. So they're making a connection now between these kind of perhaps abstracted or issues that they feel are in the world out there, but how do they connect to them, and how might it shape their career? So this is really valuable. It's interesting, though, that the setting stays the same. The classroom, the students would be sitting down as normal. The problem owner or the stakeholder comes into that world with a PowerPoint and speaks just like their lecturer would. So the problem is brought into the classroom. And the students do connect then the issues and the theories with the real life situation through those stories. So it's really valuable. Another layer that we can think about is more of a live case or problem-based learning. So again, it's something that we do a lot of in Chemie Business School, and there would be lots of examples right throughout the years of let's say, companies coming in and getting the students to work on a marketing strategy, branding strategy, you know, addressing a kind of a problem in some way for an individual company. But here's a more recent example that aligns really nicely to the sustainability agenda. So my colleague, Christina O'Connor, is lead on a really exciting initiative with An Garda Síochána, where actually the students, first year students, are designing road safety messaging. So they're of the generation that the Gardaí want to speak to. So it's really key that they're, you know, the students are actually getting to design this messaging. And this is spread right through a number of different universities now. And Christina is at the core of making this links with Maynooth and MTU and TUS and all sorts of institutions. So it's really kind of a global movement here. And it's a fantastic way to connect the issues and the problems directly. So the student is getting a hands-on understanding of even some of the dilemmas that are faced in this sort of space. They're, you know, it's not just a theoretical idea. They can't just say, oh, well, you know, don't take drugs, don't drive. They have to really think through how this messaging would land. So it deepens their engagement, I think, with the issues at hand. And then another example is a module that I have designed and I lead here at the Chemie, which is the Digital Futures Lab, which is a 12-credit master's level module, and it's a program that takes a slightly different take. So rather than 12 weeks of lectures and then you have a case study on the side, we flip that around, and actually the studio or the innovation lab is actually the core of the program. And here the students are given system level challenges to address, not just a challenge felt at an individual company level, but looking at the more systems level. And they work in, it's a kind of simulation of a real work environment. They have clear roles within their teams, and they have check-ins, and they very much take a project management kind of perspective of how to work through this 3 to 4 week innovation lab using design-based visual tools to scaffold that experience. So they map the problem as it currently stands, and then they imagine alternatives, and then they design an intervention to shape that system into the future. So very much in line with not only our graduate attitudes, but very specifically a Green Comp. A particular example then of the Digital Futures Lab is just this last year, 2025, where we had a partnership with the Midwest bioregion. So this is a growing network of over 200 actors, farmers, producers, other market actors in the food system, looking to transform Irish food system into an organic one. And a local organic food system. So their problem is that they need to kind of make connections between producers and consumers, and how would they do that? So it's the stakeholders themselves that frame the issues and frame the mission. So here's a visual of a workshop that I designed, and we convened over 80 of these stakeholders in the region to share what their concerns are, how they experience the issues of being a small farmer, having to then go and try and sell your produce as well as growing your food and being all things to all people, and the challenges that they face. And then we work to kind of turn these individually felt challenges and concerns into recognizing the system level issues that perpetuate these particular, these become a kind of a symptom, if you like, and we try and understand the system and structured issues that generate these kind of issues. And the students are engaging with the stakeholder all the time. So they have the outputs of this particular workshop, but there's ongoing engagement through the weekly reviews sessions. They're also welcomed onto the team site. They can interact with the students. And of course, we have regular interactions and meetings. And then finally, we have an exhibition and a public event as well, so that they're constantly refining their ideas and constantly sharing insights right through. So it isn't just the final matter. And here's just an example of a visual where Katrina Scully, who is our lead kind of contact point, coming every single week to the students' crit sessions, always bringing the problem back into the room. We could never kind of get away from it, and it never got too abstracted. It had to always kind of come back to the concerns as they're experienced and to the problem at hand, which is quite a discipline in itself. And then final exhibitions, we had one in the Urban Co-op, which is a community-based grocery here in Limerick, and also in the Chemie Business School, 2 different exhibitions engaging the public in different ways and engaging the stakeholders. And I think really by the end, we had 9 very interesting interventions, but our big question was, what do the stakeholders do next? So it was helping them to get ideas, but also in helping them to imagine, well, what would be the next step in the process for them. So we learned a lot, and the program's running since 2020, so we're continually growing and we're continuously getting more stakeholder engaged, creating this porous boundaries all the time. But it's resource intensive. And I think it's worth noting that if this type of deep stakeholder engagement in our formal learning is considered a good idea, we also need to recognize that the resources that are needed to make some of this happen, because it's very different from an individual lecturer standing in front of a class for 12 weeks. And in fact, it blurs these boundaries between teaching, research, and impact, which is just what our graduate attributes are asking us to do. So this is a kind of a real life manifestation of that. And it's a really exciting petri dish for research as well. So it's a really that blurring is really valuable. So it's an in-between space. It's a formal, graded module, but it's in between. It's neither a lecture hall. It's neither completely. It's not no longer. It's neither fully the workplace either. We create the space between where the stakeholders can come in and the students can go out, and it creates this really nice environment, and where there's co-creation of knowledge all along, right the way through. And the students gain a huge sense of agency, which is just exactly what our mission here at the University of Limerick is about, creating this active citizenship. And here's a place where they can develop those skills. So while it's expected of them, it's also scaffolded and supported at the same time, which is important. So I think we can think about then ESD engagement, stakeholder engagement, not as extra, but as actually core to the academic work itself. And if we are going to create this space where stakeholders are going to get more involved, and I think they should, we then to think about what are the particular roles and resources that we might need in institutions to be able to support that, and to kind of really plug in the research support, but also stakeholder engagement support, because that building those relationships and maintaining them does take quite a bit of time. So here is a framework that helps us to compare them very briefly. So it's just, the world into the classroom versus the kind of learning with. So there's just different gradations. And I think it's really valuable that if we can recognize all three, and there might even be more, that we can actually use them purposely and ensure that we've got kind of a good balance between these different approaches to engaging the stakeholder. And I probably went over time. I forgot to check. So Una, I hope I haven't gone over too much. There you are. And I look forward to any Q&A later on.
That's great, Anne-Marie. Thanks very much. Really interesting case study there. So I'm going to introduce you now to Antonio Calderon. Antonio is an associate professor in the Department of Physical Education and Sports Science, and he is going to share an evidence-informed teaching approach of social justice pedagogies, co-creating toolkits for teacher educators and pre-service teachers. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you so much, Una and colleagues. You are all very welcome. And so hopefully you can see my first slide.
You can,
excellent. Yeah. So it's so good to see different excellent practice from colleagues. So really well done, Anne-Marie. It's a really interesting case study there. So now we are moving on to another faculty, this case the Faculty of Education and Health Science. This experience that I'm going to introduce you in the next few minutes is to one that is hosted within the Department of Physical Education and within two main degrees, one at the undergraduate level, the one in which we are educating physical education teachers, and in the professional Master of Education, in which obviously the aspiration and the aim is the same one. So just to position the whole experience within the national strategy of ESD and also the bigger SDG framework. I think when we are just looking at the presentation that I am about to introduce to all of you in the call, this one in which we have put some time in co-creating toolkits for teacher educators and teachers will nicely align with those two priorities. Priority number 2 and priority number 3 is in relation to priority number 2. We are really focusing on those bullet points there. We are promoting the use of ESD pedagogies, in particular those engaging with pedagogies of social justice, and through a process in which we are just trying to embed those pedagogies in our own curriculum, and at the same time creating new resources for our pre-service teachers to use, but also our teacher educators to use, because sometimes we are so focused on student teachers or pre-service teachers, and we forget about us as teacher educators, and that is why we focus too on a tool just to help us in thinking about the ESD space. And the other one, which is that one, priority number 3, quite really aligned with that capacity of building our own capacity as educators, or then as future teachers. Okay, so the reason I was just presenting this as an evidence-based informed approach, it's quite comprehensive. I think that the whole approach that we are taking just from back in 2023, 2024, which is the first year that we started, it just, we are always on an ongoing process of gathering information from our student teachers, using that information to inform what we do as part of our modules. This one in particular is a 3rd-year module, sociology, a sociological concept of teaching and learning in physical education, and the focus is physical education, but obviously the transfer could be to any other subject areas, as you could see now in a few minutes. And then I feel it is powerful because there is a whole ongoing process in which we design, they go on placement, we gather more information using different tools and instruments, and then we use that information to create our own resources that they are going to be used again as part of the different modules. And this is where we are at the moment. So it is an ongoing thing, and that is what is making evidence informed and is ongoing. And because we are always co-creating resources for our students, and I'm going to present in this presentation too. Well, these 2 projects is Justice ED and SATL. Obviously, they couldn't have happened without the support of the funding from Research Ireland in case of Justice ED and the new foundation framework, and also the one from the HEA and the SATL, which will be well known by I'm sure by people in the call. So those funding opportunities were really important for us just to keep going, because there is a moment in which we are asking for support for professional visual designer just to help us to create some of the resources that we are using. So thank you so much to all involved for that support, and also our colleagues from Ulster University, Ubuntu, and DSI Ireland. So the first one that I'm going to present, this is a toolkit part of the Justice ED project. And as you can see there, the left-hand side, this is how we called this project. And basically what we want to do is just creating a toolkit for teacher educators to embrace social justice pedagogies that we know that sometimes is an uncomfortable space to be. And we wanted to create that space. And that's why we connected teacher educators and student teachers from Ulster University, so in this case from the north and the south, and from 2 different jurisdictions from the island of Ireland. And basically what we wanted to do is just to help everybody in the call, again, teacher educators and pre-service teachers. And that's why as a whole, a whole process of, what is needed, what is required, what are the expectations, what are the needs. So we want to create this toolkit that, in a nutshell, I'm going to show you. So if you obviously happy to share the link, of course, and if you go to the UL repository, there is a link. Well, there are 2 options to access to this toolkit. One of them is in the PDF form, which is not ideal, I think, because it's a flat document, not interactive. Well, it's interactive, but that one here is as part of the external links that, again, I will share in the chat if that's no bother at all after my presentation. So you will get to this interactive toolkit in which we have some different case studies. So we have 4 in this case, one related to creating safe spaces, and another one related to, how to deal with some kind of conflicting school cultures. Another one that we have created, which is we're just trying to show our student teachers the importance of intersectionality. And the final one, which is something very common, I'm sure, for all teacher educators in the call, in which, when we are supervising our school our student teachers on placement, and we do the observations and the debriefing, we sometimes get that thing that, there's nothing they can do. So in terms of, because, placement, we know is so complex at the time. So if you clicking any of these case studies, and obviously it's an open or educational resource, so it's open for everybody. So we start with a small little narrative, and which is here. We have a title, and then we have some guiding questions in relation to how, in this case, Sarah, which is a teacher educator, can negotiate this situation that we have presented in this professionally designed by our colleagues visual thinkery visual photo and drawing. And so we are using these visual case studies just to prompt the discussion, and we have all them printed, because we bring them all to our tutorials and labs. And I think it is so important, even though it could be a minimal thing, but I think it's so important that we have them printed, and so the student teachers can touch them, can circulate them, can use them as something physical to touch. And they've been very helpful, and this is the first year that we've been using these case studies, and what we know is that our students are definitely using them, and again, we know about the complexities of school placement, especially the first and the second, but at least they are being kind of having some kind of impact in the toolkit. You can also see some resources that we have co-created. You have all the visual prompts, you have the approach that we used, and then we have also shared some testimonial from the student teachers and from teacher educators as well. So just have a look and see what you think. If you have any feedback, of course, there's an option here to share your feedback and your contribution, because this is obviously a dynamic source, and we are just willing to keep them and to keep it improved. Okay, so that is the one related to, we're back here, yes, so that is the one related to Justice ED, and the one related to SATEL, which, as you may know, is one of the funding projects that we got related to looking at our own prospective teachers' experiences when they go on placement and try to embrace those social justice pedagogies. We have created also, remember that ongoing gathering of data, informing, creating. So we have put together all our visual prompts, our visual resources in a website that I'm going to share with you in a minute. But basically, we have structured that website in 3 main blocks. The one in which we are, this one is obviously focused for a student teacher. So the one is that in which just trying to set the scene in relation to some visuals related to provoking thoughts and getting to know definitions, concepts that are, I suppose, the first step just to start getting and understanding or embracing these pedagogies, and then some visual for self-reflections, and then some visuals in which we go for different case studies. So yeah, I'm gonna go now to the website, the SATEL one, with, again, I will share the link in a minute, but basically, if you click into different sections, you will be able to see the visual that we again have created. So for instance, some of them and all of them, it's taking a while, sorry. So it's not just the visual, but also a team that they're making them just to reflect on that aspect in relation to, okay, the difference in between theory and practice in this case, isn't it? Or, for instance, the way in which all the isms that we are creating are entangled, are connected, are aligned. And our most successful piece from the SATEL website, I suppose, are the self-reflections and the case studies. But the self-reflections, we use, again, the professionally designed visual just to ask our students to think about, and we use this obviously as as prompts for our discussions in the tutorials. And in this website, you will be able to see also the resources that our own students are co-creating as we go. So the lesson plans and digital portfolios and some of the infographics. So I think, again, there's much in there, but I think it's just to give you a taste of both. And I think that's all. So I will be happy to take any more questions. And as I said, both are open source, and they could be scanned through this QR code. But again, I will be looking after myself just to share the two links in the chat, and obviously happy to be connected to anyone interested, just to have a chat and see potential implication or application of this work that we are doing, as I said, in the last 3 years. So thank you so much.
Perfect, Antonio. Thanks very much for that. We're going to move on now to the School of Modern Languages and Applied Linguistics, and I'm going to introduce you to Martha Fortes Saez. Martha is a Spanish teacher and PhD researcher, and she is going to talk to us about integrating social entrepreneurship into language learning, preparing business students for real-life challenges.
Well, thank you everyone for inviting me to this meeting and to be able to share my research. Then I'm going to share a project that integrates social entrepreneurship into language learning. Social entrepreneurship is creating businesses that solve a societal problem or a business or an environmental problem. 1 second. Yeah. Here in this project, 50 business students from the University of Limerick and the University of Valencia work together in international teams. They both use English and Spanish to communicate while they were addressing local problems. Then the aim of this study was to develop language skills, intercultural competence, critical thinking, and collaboration. Here are the demographics. Then the students had to complete 3 main tasks. In the first one, they created short videos to share personal cultural facts, which help to get to know each other better. Then in the second task, they conducted interviews amongst local entrepreneurs and NGOs with the aim to identify problems in their local communities. They shared this information with their peers, they analyzed the data, and then the third task, that was the implementation phase, they had to come up with ideas to solve the problems identified during the interviews, and they presented these ideas or products through digital storytelling. Then they meet online. They had to conduct 3 meetings, and these meetings happened in a VR app called Spatial that simulates an office. Then quantitative data was collected through pre and post surveys, and also the students' growth reflections through the projects, which help analyze what were their experience within the project. And then when they came back from co-op, I conducted interviews to investigate to what extent they have applied the skills learned in real work scenarios. Then the quantitative data that was collected through surveys with a Likert scale of 7 completely agree, 1 completely disagree. I analyzed this data using statistical analysis with SPSS. For the pair variables, I used the Wilcoxon sign rank test, and then I analyzed for their transferable skills using descriptive statistics. The results of the Wilcoxon sign rank test, they show for pair 3 digital skills and pair 4 intercultural skills, there was a strong statistical difference, meaning that the p-value was lower than 0.05, which shows a positive effect in the development of these skills after the project. Per 5, teamwork and collaboration didn't show a strong statistical difference. However, we can observe that the median score increased after the project, also showing a positive development. For further transferable skills were analyzed after the project, like socio-emotional, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, problem solving, autonomy, and leadership, with all these skills scoring 5.741 in a Likert scale of 7, with positive results after the project. Then the qualitative data was analyzed through thematic analysis with en vivo 14. Qualitative data was the written reflections through the projects and also the interviews conducted after the students came back from co-op. Here we see the themes and sub-themes identified in the written reflections. Then some of the students experience challenge, such as issues with the VR app, language barriers, or organizing online meetings, but they also express the benefits that they encounter through this project, like meeting supportive partners who help them to improve their language learning, and also using different technologies to learn and complete tasks. Both the challenge and the benefits help them to develop important transferable skills. The challenge helped them develop time management, problem solving, and leadership, while the benefits help them develop leadership, digital skills, language proficiency, intercultural, critical thinking, amongst others, socio-emotional, teamwork. Then, one second. Yeah, critical thinking was one of the skills that we wanted to develop through this project. And I also analyzed this skill with the products that the students submitted after the project. Then 6 out of 8 international groups succeed in creating products that solve one of the problems they identified during the interviews they conducted, and they aligned them with the Sustainable Development Goals. They presented these products through digital storytelling. Then, for example, this group presented a product that was an app to rent second-hand furniture, and they told the story of a love relationship that ends with the life of the furniture that ends, and how through online apps like online dating or this furniture app, you can give a second life to your not to your love life, and a second life to your furniture. Then storytelling is a very powerful tool for marketing and to, of course, to advertise products. Well, they went on co-op the following year, and after they came back from co-op, I conducted interviews to see how they have applied the skills learned in real work scenarios. It was very interesting that the students explained that this project was the first time that they got to work with international teams. So through the projects, they got to understand work dynamics better in different countries, as they were not only doing their co-op in Ireland, they were doing their work experience as well in foreign countries like Germany. Also, it allowed them to be more open-minded towards other cultures. They gain confidence when speaking with native speakers, as in some of the companies, they had colleagues from Spanish-speaking countries, and they explained that they felt more confident in using the Spanish language with them. And also they succeed in intercultural communication, and they apply practical skills like organizing online meetings and writing professional emails. So overall, all the skills analyzed, they score above 4.5 in a Likert scale of 7. Some of the challenge that the students experience also help them to develop problem solving and adaptability. They increase their confidence in speaking Spanish. They develop intercultural competence and digital skills, which they apply in their work placements. Overall, the project enhanced critical thinking, allowed students to increase their awareness to the Sustainable Development Goals, and this project is connected to real-life business relevance. Then the project was funded by the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation, and here are the reference for the study, and if you have further questions, here is my email. Thank you very much.
That's great, Martha. Thank you very much. So to our final faculty now, Science and Engineering, and I'm going to introduce you to Gordon Armstrong, who is the Chief Technical Officer in the Bernal Institute. And Gordon is going to talk us through transforming the learning environment through the My Green Labs initiative.
Una, thank you very much indeed, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to have the opportunity to meet with you this afternoon and share with you a little bit of what we've been doing across the Faculty of Science and Engineering. Perfect, great, thanks very much indeed. Right, just for a little bit of context, the Bernal Institute, for those of you who don't know UL already, and perhaps not so much the Faculty of Science and Engineering, is one of two research institutes on the UL campus. It's the home to research in science and engineering across the faculty. We also host a lot of the lab-based work done in the Health Research Institute, and we have 3 of the national research centres funded by Enterprise Ireland and Science Foundation Ireland, Research Ireland, as they are now, housed with us as well. I just had a quick look this morning before I came on to the session here with you to give you an idea of the size of it. The 634 people use the facility as of today. Among them, there's 195 postgrads to whom the Bernal Institute is home for the duration of their projects, and 99 final year project and thought master students are doing their project work primarily based in labs in Bernal. In a typical year, we would have about 50 to 60 Erasmus interns come through our labs each summer, and we would have somewhere in the region of 45, 50 UL undergraduate interns come into us at the end of first year, second year, third year on UL scholarships. As Ida referred to at the start, the teaching and learning environment in UL is very much research led, and that is why all these students tend to gravitate into us. It's to introduce that research piece into their time with us as early as possible. Marta showed us the UN Sustainable Development Goals there a moment ago. And I suppose, like a lot of research labs and centres around the country, the work that we do in Bernal is mapped onto the UN SDGs. Most of the work we do is kind of in the context of health, energy, environment. But if I go back a couple of years to 2020, 2021, just as we were coming back onto campus after COVID, our colleagues in the Bernal Biolabs, the PhDs, the postdocs there, as we came back onto campus and we started to resume work in the lab, perhaps with the benefit of a little time away from the day-to-day to think, they started to ask the question, how well do we actually do this sustainability thing ourselves? You know, we write in our proposals we're sustainable. We say in the UL strategic plan, sustainability is at the heart of what we do. But they started asking, do we actually do this? And you might nearly say, Anne-Marie, they flipped it around in that they're our stakeholders, but they were the ones came and engaged us in Bernal and said, we want to do this better. We want to make our labs more sustainable in a structured kind of a way. And the proposal they came with was to get involved in the My Green Labs initiative that I'm going to say a little bit about now. You see, the crux of it, as the students started looking into sustainability, was we learned that typical lab is 10 times more energy intensive than an office space. To give you an idea of the scale of that, in 2021, the analog devices in MSSI buildings where Bernal is based used 2.89 million kilowatts of energy. The only place in UL that uses more energy than us in a year is the arena, and they've 2 swimming pools to look after. But in addition to that, we use 4 times more water than an office space. People often don't realize how resource intensive labs are. And worldwide, labs produce 5.5 million tons of plastic waste every year. And among these, biological and clinical labs are especially waste intensive. There is a tremendous amount of single-use plastic used in biological and clinical work. And the students got to thinking, you know, what can we do about this? And as they researched it, what they learned was that about 1/3 of the resources that are used in running a lab facility are run under the control of the people at the bench. So that got them thinking, well, this is actually the piece of the equation we can work on. And that what they came up with to do it was to put themselves forward as a lab to be a pilot for the MyGreen Labs certification process. Now, MyGreen Labs is a worldwide initiative, and it started in the US. And it's very, very flexible. If you're interested in measuring sustainability in your own lab, your own department, your own institution, it's very, very flexible. You can do it at the level of an individual research group. You can do it by lab. Our colleagues in biological sciences have done it by department. You could do it by institution. Entire multinational companies have done it. The way it works is you sign up to the initiative, and in conjunction with assessors from MyGreen Labs, they do a survey of the members of your lab, the students, the technical team, the staff, the head of the lab, everybody. They do a survey of how aware are they of the practices that are in place, and where are their practices to reduce electricity usage, reduce waste, reduce chemicals, and where are their gaps? And then over a period of kind of 9 months to a year, the advisors from MyGreen Labs will work with you to implement changes, to make suggestions on how the students in the lab can revise how they work and improve it. And the way we did this in Bernal Labs was the students themselves wrote what they called the Green Lab Manual. So as they devised new means of working and efficiencies, they documented it. That became the Green Labs Manual. And then a year later, the same survey is done a second time around. And based on the improvement in practices that you see, you get certified. The level everybody's aiming for is green. Green is obviously the highest. And it's an ongoing process. Every 2 years then there's a recertification. We're actually just due ours again now, where over time the process looks at the incremental improvements that you can make. You know, you've looked at the big energy usages. Now have you looked at freezers and storage? You've looked at plastic waste. Now have you looked at cutting down on the amount of chemical you use? You looked at travel. Now have you looked at the energy you're using in the PCs that you're using for hybrid meetings instead, that kind of thing. It's a continuous cycle of improvement. And the survey is done over 12 key areas. They're standard across everybody. Now, obviously, some of these apply to any given lab more than others. I mean, just for example, in a biology lab, green chemistry is not so important because we don't, in the Bernal biolabs, we don't do chemical synthesis work. Conversely, our colleagues in chemical sciences, when they certified over the past 2 years, green chemistry would have been a big thing for them. And one of the teaching initiatives that they built into this was, as they did their certification process over the 2 years, they offered a series of final year projects in which final year students from the chemistry, environmental science and biochemistry programs redesigned their own teaching labs to reduce the amount of chemical used in them, to scale down the amount of material used in biological labs. And they pretty much halved the amount of waste those labs produce in a year in the process. Some of this ties into university policy. I mean, UL and you all do have policies on travel, that we don't travel where we don't have to. We use public transport where we can. This is an opportunity to highlight those policies that already exist to people in the classroom, people in the lab who may not be so aware of them. And the other thing we found it's done over time is, particularly because this is student driven, it's the guys in the lab who want to do this. They come advocating to us in technical support. They'd like to get certified. We in turn then engage with them, with buildings and estates, with purchasing, with procurement, to work on the bigger initiatives where they need outside help. It's actually the students are now coming, asking our colleagues in professional services where they can improve. Just as an example, only in the past week, our National Battery Lab are now in the early stages of doing Green Lab certification. And they've recognised that in their lab, there's a disconnect between where they buy chemicals from and how that chemical is treated as waste at the end of life. So they've actually come back to us asking, can they meet with our purchasing and procurement department to try and work out as a group how to improve that? So that's really valuable engagement. And there's everyone from the FIPs working in the labs right through to visiting professors involved in this. So what has happened over the past 4 years of the cycle is the guys who started as a student in the lab have learned these practices. This is the way they know how to do science. And they're now taking what they've learned out into the workforce. They're taking it into the labs they've gone into as postgrads or postdocs, and they're bringing those practices with them. What we're also beginning to see now is some of the new students coming in. They've come to us in an FIP, for example. They're just back from co-op, and they're now bringing what they learned on co-op back in. And they're coming to us with suggestions like, we've seen ways to reduce waste when we worked in the pharma industry and co-ops. Could we try that here? We saw purchasing practices when we were buying for our work in co-op. Would that work here? And in turn, we, over the past couple of years, have shared those lessons with biological sciences when they certified in 2023. Biological sciences have shared it with chemical sciences. Chemical sciences are now closing the loop. They're coming back to work with us on the improvements they implemented with their students for the next round of certification here. But just something to flag, this is kind of our journey in this has been a bottom-up student-driven. In parallel, there is a pilot project running through Science Foundation Ireland, Research Ireland, where they're inviting, I use that term loosely, Research Ireland funded investigators to get certified. Now, at the moment, it's described as strongly recommended, but it's a reasonable guess that it will become a requirement in the coming years that you can show proven sustainability initiatives when you apply for Research Ireland funding. And as a way of doing it, this method, it has worked well for us. I'll just close by making the invitation that if it's of interest to anybody and you'd like to find out more, come and talk to us. Give us a shout here in UL. Come and visit us, have a chat with us, see how it's done. It's very much a team effort, just even here in Bernal, emphasize it's not one or two people involved in this. There's a whole group in each lab drive it. I hope it's of interest. As I say, if you have any questions, if you'd like to find out more, please pop a question in the chat, get in touch afterwards. Be happy to talk to you.
Thanks, Gordon.
That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Perfect. We are right up on the time, and I know that Dr. Lorraine Tansey, who is based in UL and is the Programme Manager for studentvolunteer.ie, that initiative, did want to just jump in and say if there were any institutions who were interested in joining her. Do you want to just even 10 seconds, Lorraine? We're right up on the time.
Thanks so much, Una, and thank you very much to Mark as well and the forum for this series. Gordon spoke so eloquently there about student engagement, and at the end of the day, mobilising our student population is so key to the Education for Sustainable Development work. And so just to highlight that, UL is the national lead for studentvolunteer.ie. We engage students in volunteering, we connect them with charities, non-profits, gorgeous community groups. We recognise their work as a volunteer, and come join us. Your institution is so welcome to be part of our national initiative. We are about enriching the curriculum, co-curricular spaces, creating community-based research partnerships. We're about transferable skill development, societal impact, and at the end of the day, making community opportunities available to students in an accessible and inclusive way. So I'm Lorraine.Tansey@ul.ie and love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. We'll hand back to you, Mark. Sorry, we're right on the time.
No, not at all. It was great. So thanks everyone. Really rich, diverse examples of ESD practice. A lot of it student-led. I have loads of questions, but I don't have time to ask them now. So, but I might follow up with you on some of the initiatives. It just strikes me like a lot of it is moving towards what Anne-Marie mentioned in the beginning, is sort of that deep learning and creating space for that. Which is really, really important. So look, I'm conscious that we're at 2 now, and there's lots of really positive comments in the chat. No specific question, I think. So we might leave it at that, but that was fantastic. Look, thanks to all the presenters for taking the time to prepare and present today. And we'll see you next week for our second last Spotlight series. So thanks very much, Una, for organising everything. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mark.
colleagues.